Indian River County Commission meeting begins at 9 a.m. Please stay tuned.
Time to start the meeting, November 14th. Let's see, we have Stan Bowling doing the invocation, our own Stan Bowling, Planning Director, and I will lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Let's pray. Lord God, life is your idea, and it's a wonderful expression of your very nature, and we thank you for it. We want to pause this morning and just thank you for the life you've given us. We also admit that without you, our lives don't have the purpose and meaning you designed them for. So we ask this morning that you connect us to you, and we ask that you would help us do the good works that you've laid out for us to do today and the rest of this week. We lift up to you this meeting and ask that the decisions that come from this meeting and what comes afterwards would be in accordance with those good works you want us to do. We lift up to you our leaders here in the state and in our nation, and ask that you would make them instruments for your purposes. And we give you thanks for the chance to pray for them. We lift these things up in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, additions and corrections. We have a correction on item 7P. It's a correction to page 144. Of addition, item 9B2, a request from Richard Bialowski, request to speak form dated November 9th. Addition, item 10A, status report of site at 5925 37th Street for Residential Treatment Center, memo dated November 9th. An additional backup for item number 11I1.
Mr. Chairman.
Fax dated number 13. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's been brought to my attention that Mr. Hetty had requested through an email to speak at the prior to the Wednesday deadline for the agenda, and it was an oversight according to what I've been told.
It was my fault. I just didn't put
I've got the emails if y'all would like to look at it. The form's not filled out, and I told him there would not be a vote based on that, but I've got copies of his request. It's the...
All right, I have no objection.
I'll move addition.
Okay, we have addition of
Brian Hetty, yes.
Under matters by the public.
Yes.
All right. We have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
And a second.
We need a motion first.
So moved.
And a second.
I didn't. Motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Number 5, proclamations and presentations. We have a presentation of a proclamation honoring Thomas S. Lowther. Mr. Lowther.
Not here. Oh,
yeah. Not here. I'm going to have to read this.
You don't have to read it.
I don't have to read it? I have to read it. Whereas Thomas S. Lowther was elected to the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners by the citizens of Indian River County in 2002 and was elected chairman of the board by his fellow commissioners in 2005. Whereas during his term, Tom Lowther served on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, Court Administrator's Budget Committee, Economic Development Council, County Liaison for the Economic Development Division, Emergency Services District Advisory Committee, Enterprise Zone Development Agency, Florida Regional Councils Association, Policy Board, Indian River County Canvassing Board, Marine Advisory, Narrows Watershed Action Committee, Medical Examiner's Budget Committee, Metropolitan Planning Organization, Parks and Recreation Committee, Recreation Committee, Southern Region Recreation Advisory Council, Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board, Transit Strategic Planning Advisory Committee, Treasure Coast Council of Local Governments, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, Treasure Coast Sports Commission, Value Adjustment Board, and the Workforce Development Consortium of the Treasure Coast. Whereas Tom Lowther was successful in gaining the public support for renewal of an environmental bond issue and instrumental in working towards the consolidation of firefighters and paramedics in the county. And whereas Thomas S. Lowther spearheaded joint meetings with St. Lucie, Martin, and Brevard County Commission, as well as joint meetings with the City of Vero Beach, City of Sebastian, City of Fellsmere, Town of Orchid, and Town of Indian River Shores Councils. Whereas Tom's civic involvement includes the Sunrise Rotary Club, Vero Masonic Lodge, Vero Shrine Club, High 12 Masonic Club, 100 Club, Republican Evening Club, Independent Funeral Directors of Florida Church Council Finance Committee. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners in River County, Florida, that the Board appreciates the many hours of dedicated service and recognizes the outstanding contributions of Tom Lowther and his fellow board members. Wish him the very best. And I want to add my very personal congratulations to you too, Tom.
Appreciate that.
It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure serving you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that, y'all. I do.
I also think we have this honey of a plaque going to you, and I'm going to give this to you also. This is very nice that Kim had done, apparently. It imitates the one that I have from the city. I think Sandra has one or two from the city. So anyway, Tom, hang this on your wall.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Again, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
What does the S stand for?
I'm not telling. Mickey
Swan, that's it.
Me and Mickey Mouse.
Okay, now we have a presentation proclamation honoring Arthur R. Newberger. Is he here?
Yes,
Who's got that? The Vice Chairman has this?
I've got yours, Art.
Okay.
It says, whereas,
Ditto. Just can you say ditto for what?
almost, Arthur Newberger was elected to the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners by the citizens of Indian River County in 2002 and was elected chairman of the board by his fellow commissioners in 2006. And whereas during his term, Art has done a bunch of stuff, therefore be it complained.
4 inches worth.
Good enough.
Whereas during his term, Arthur R. Newberger served on the Audit Selection Committee, Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee, Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee, Council of Public Officials, Indian River County Canvassing Board, the Indian River Council on Aging, Indian River County Hospital District Planning Advisory Committee, Juvenile Justice Committee, Keep Indian River Beautiful Land Acquisition Advisory Committee, Metropolitan Planning Organization, Metropolitan Planning Organization, Treasure Coast Transportation Council, Public Library Advisory Committee, School Readiness Coalition, Sebastian Watershed Action Committee, State Housing Initiatives Partnership, Local Review Committee, Tourist Development Council, Transit Strategic Plan Advisory Committee, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, Value Adjustment Board, Workforce Development Board, and whereas Arthur R. Newberger has given of his time as a committee member to public servant by first serving on the City of Vero Beach City Council from 1972 to 1976, and again in 1996 to 2002. He has kept his campaign promise by preserving the integrity of residential agricultural neighborhoods, cooperated in resolving differences between the Emergency Services District and the County Commission, provided recreational activities for all age groups in all areas of the county, and whereas Arthur R. Newberger was instrumental in getting the Boys and Girls Club started in Indian River County and has been a supporter and member of the Boys and Girls Club Council since the club started. And whereas Art's civic involvement includes the Taxpayers Association of Indian River County, Civic Association of Indian River County, Pelican Island Audubon Society, Center for the Arts, Indian River Land Trust, McKee Gardens, a generous donor to the Indian River County Blood Bank, Indian River County Historical Society, American Legion, Elks, Indian River County Veterans Council, Vero Beach JCs, and now, therefore, be it proclaimed.
Easy for you to say.
By the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the board appreciates the many hours of dedication, service, and recognizes the outstanding contributions of Arthur R. Newberger and his fellow board members. Wish him the very best in his future. Adopted this 14th day of November 2006, signed by 4 of them. You didn't sign this one, Art?
I didn't sign that one?
No.
Why not?
Congratulations.
Thank you. My speech. Wow. Thank you all. Thank everybody out there. And thank all the people up in TV land and city people and county people that elected me over these years. It's been a great ride. And I'm getting ready to get retired and take off and see the rest of the world. I've seen enough of these faces around here. So
Another great ride in your motorhome.
It has been a pleasure. This is a good commission, and I wish the best to the new commissioners coming up. Joe's not here, Peter's here. Wish you the best of luck. and I know you'll fill this seat with integrity. Thank you so much for the plaques.
Thank you, Art.
Let's move along. Consent agenda. Do we have any items want to be...
Yes.
I want to put one thing.
Go ahead.
B for just information.
Hey, D for dog?
B as in boy.
Oh, B, I'm sorry. B.
I have BHJ,
BHJ,
N,
N,
N as in November, and O.
Okay, we have a
So move.
motion for the
Second.
remainder. Have a motion to approve all those items not mentioned. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item B. Sandra, I believe?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did notice that we have 100, am I reading this right, 158,000 in this fund?
It looks like we have an answer.
Good morning, Diane Bernardo, Finance Director. That is correct, and just to bring you up to date, too, we've also collected $4,200 in October. Now, we will have some money that'll trickle in through back tickets, traffic tickets, but until the amount is spent down, we'll be giving you the quarterly report.
And no one spent this money until 05, 06, and they spent 25,000.
Right. What happened is there's an invitation that's sent out, there's a packet that's sent out through the budget office to St. Edwards, I think, and the school district. So far, the school district is the only one who has applied for the money, and they've just recently applied. I've talked to Karen Vandervoorde over there, and have encouraged her to use these funds to supplant her program over there.
Yes, because I think that was the need.
Yes.
For this. Do we need to do more education for the school system too?
Well, it's limited on what it can be spent for. So what they do is they write a grant, basically, and they provide it to the budget office. It's reviewed. If it meets the terms, then the budget office brings it to the board for approval. I do believe Karen is also applying for funds for the summer program, too. Right now, I think the last grant she applied for, $29,400, is for semesters 1 and 2 over at the high school, but she is also planning to provide a summer program, she told me to. That plan hasn't been in place yet, hasn't been provided to the budget director.
Right, and basically we've just recently, for the record, Jason Brown, Budget Director, we just recently received a request from St. Edwards. That is our first request we've received from them. We're going through that application right now, and we'll probably be coming forward to the board for an additional grant. They've requested about $44,000, and this is just basically expending the dollars that are left in that fund, because as Commissioner Bowden mentioned, no funds were requested for about the first 2 years, so they were kind of behind in requesting those funds, so we're just have to spend them down in accordance with the ordinance for which they were collected.
Thank you.
I think that basically answers my question, but they've been notified each year that these funds were available? They just didn't apply?
Yes, we send a letter out during the same process for all our other nonprofit agencies in the spring. About in April, we sent a letter out to both the school district and St. Edwards. Those are the only two entities we're aware of in the county that have such programs. We've sent those out since the inception, and just a couple of years ago, the school district started taking advantage of that, and we have gotten our first request from St. Edwards.
Thank you.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item H, Gary, this is the Florida Grapefruit League Association membership.
Correct, yeah. I just wanted, this seems to have a lot to do with tourism. I think the basic is for, and I just wonder why these monies couldn't be taken from the tourist tax dollars instead of...
I was being careful because it's really to do with baseball. A lot of it's to do with the baseball teams. And I was getting a lot of information from the Grapefruit League without being a member, and they finally just said, they won't give me any more information unless I become a member. So we could take out tourist tax, but I was, just in case, I thought I put it here, but we could. I think Could be paid out of tourist tax.
That'd be what, $2,500?
Yeah, a total of $2,500.
For you to attend the, well, I'd move that comes out of tourist tax.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. That would have to be sent to the TDC to work on it?
Something this minor doesn't need to be, as long as we make the motion here, they're advisory in nature, so.
That's true.
You're comfortable?
We'll make them aware of it, though.
Are you comfortable with this?
With that transfer, I mean, you came for us with a recommendation now as far as where exactly the money should come from.
We could take it out of tourist tax,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Oh, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries on H. J is approval of a bid award for Indian River County bid number 2006012, North County Water Treatment Plant Expansion Project, Utilities Department Water Distribution Division. Gary?
Oh, I missed a couple.
J.
No, I had I.
I thought you said J.
I did, I misspoke, but I said I had I marked.
Oh.
I just had
You
a
don't want
simple-
J?
No, out-of-county travel, county administrator.
Guess we can go ahead and look at I.
Do we,
Out-of-county travel for the county administrator.
The only question I have, Joe, is the benefit of this.
Say.
The benefit of this to the, I know back, and I don't know, but these derivatives and stuff back several years ago, a lot of governments got in trouble with derivatives, and I just wonder what are you looking to bring back from that meeting?
Well, first of all, we use derivatives when we do bond issues, but this is really for my continuing education to keep my I've got to keep my CGFOA certificate current, and I got the seminar free because they had a nonprofit. They listed nonprofits for free.
paper.
So I called them up and said, government's nonprofit under the Florida statute. They disagreed, but after I sent them the stat copy of the page,
Move approval.
they agreed.
I'll move approval.
All right.
Been moved and seconded.
On H and I.
Yes, that would be appropriate, I think.
Okay.
Okay, H and I. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The other is just, I read through this on item N, this change order. The question I have is the backup says that the plan was included extensive work and design on the smoke evacuation system for both buildings 1 and 2. But now we find out that I guess it wasn't extensive enough because they want $62,000 to improve the system. That was it not designed right to begin with, or?
Well, Steve Bloom, project manager. Situation. This is an extremely complex aspect of the building. It has to do with the 2 large atriums in each building, and the requirement is that the way it functions is that when there's one of the air handlers senses smoke, then it sets off the fire alarm, which in turn notifies the fire department. It then shuts down the HVAC system. And then there's a very complex system that calls for automatic opening of a number of doors. I think it's 4 in building 1 and 3 in building 2. And the sequencing of that cross connects with the security system and the automatic door openers on the sliding doors and this, that, and the other thing. And when our engineers got together with fire prevention, it was determined that there were some additional requirements in order to make this thing work as smoothly as possible, because you do not want the doors to not activate properly and thereby cause undue pressure. There's wind going through these doors at up to 238 feet per minute when this thing is open, and it's just a complex thing, and this is really a fraction of the cost of the system, and it's regretful, but I wouldn't call it a misdesign or might have been some coordination problems because you have so many parties involved. You have the door and hardware suppliers and the fire alarm people, the HVAC, and all that. So it's just one of those situations where we end up with a safer building.
Yeah, and I have no doubt. In fact, I think this is a good system. There's times I think we've needed it in this building for various things to move some air out. But I just get concerned when I read something like this, and we pay a lot of money to consultants, engineers, architects,
That's
et
right.
cetera, and we pay them to do a job for us, and then if it's not done properly, and it's no fault of our own, I don't question the need for this. I just have a question as to, why wasn't this done right up front, and why are we kicking in another $162,000 for something I assume should have been done correctly the first time?
Pardon me, it's 62.
What did I say?
162.
Oh, $62,064, yeah.
I know that's a lot of money. This is an expensive system by nature, and I think that it is warranted. It's added value to the building, and I would recommend approval.
I don't question the need for it at all, Steve. I just question how we got,
Well, in a perfect world, Gary's right. But in our world, that's why we have this contingency fund to take care of matters like
Well,
that.
that's right. It's not always a pleasant thing to have to do, but we do have our responsibilities.
Florida DOT does the same thing, always has a 5% contingency fund.
I think government in general is famous for it.
Well,
But, okay, I'll move approval, because I know we need the system, there's no question about it.
Second,
Yes, sir.
I've brought this forward because this isn't the first time this has happened, and as to the architect or whatever. So when we build something else, we'll just look at all this again.
We have a concern too, because we've got an architect and engineer, construction manager who've gone on Walland. But one of the things is, it's a big complex, 54 million, and in the private industry, they make adjustments in the field. Unfortunately, we can't. Being a government, we have to come up here for every change order, but we'd have made an adjustment in the field for this.
okay, do we have a motion on item N?
Yes, Gary
Just in a
moved.
second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And 43rd Ave subcomplex change order?
I just need somebody to explain to me what the water cooler is. Add a water cooler for $2,544. I know it can't be a drinking water cooler, can it? Please tell me it isn't.
Lynn Williams, project manager, and yes, it is. It involves 2 water coolers because of handicap accessibility and the plumbing that runs the water line and the drain line for it.
So it's the whole installation?
Yes.
Okay. So that includes running all the pipes? And
Right.
Okay. I had a vision of a 5-gallon jug sitting in it.
No, it is the entire
We're not the federal government.
process of it.
Okay, I'll move approval.
Have a motion? And a
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
because J was pulled but not considered in the original motion, should we have a motion to
I'll move
approve J?
approval.
Mr. Chairman, Sandra, Ms. Bowden made the motion for I and J when we approved them.
Okay, but one of them was not on the agenda to be reconsidered.
Yeah,
I think it was already
If you've
approved
done,
by,
fine, I just,
Whenever we approved I, the motion was for I and J. Whenever the J was pulled,
oh, I
then
thought you were
went
bringing
back.
up that one was not pulled
No,
from.
That he didn't talk about.
Right,
So
but-
we'll just double do it.
Okay. But it was approved.
As long as you're all happy with it. All right, where are we? Public items. Public hearings. 9A1, Premier Home Financial LLC's request for abandonment of a portion of 22nd Street in Westgate Colony, east of 82nd Avenue. Mr. Bowling?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stan Bowling, Planning Director. The subject rights-of-way under consideration with this request are located in part of the Westgate Colony subdivision. And on the aerial here, if you can make it out, State Road 60 is here toward the bottom. Move this up a bit. State Road 60 here toward the bottom. This is the Westgate Colony subdivision, single-family subdivision with public streets running through it. And Westgate Colony was platted in the 1950s. Part of that plat included a half-street right-of-way, which is highlighted here in yellow, along the north portion of that subdivision. And that street has never been improved. It is a paper street, and it is a half-street. In fact, it really functions as the side yard and rear yard of these lots that are developed now, and there are many trees within this right-of-way area. Fairly recently, the Grove site to the north, zoned residential, has received preliminary plat approval for a subdivision, And that subdivision includes extending these public roads from Westgate Colony through this new Sienna Groves development, and ultimately another connection out to 26th Street. And during the review of that preliminary plat, staff recommended and the Planning and Zoning Commission agreed that there is no need for this half-street between those two developments, and there's no need to provide access or to ever put in the street that's being requested for abandonment. There's no need to go to the east with Pine Creek condos. They already have their own access and could not go through Pine Creek condos. The property to the west has access off of State Road 60, and a portion of it's actually been purchased by DOT for future stormwater management purposes. The staff's review of this request, and here are the actual graphics showing the right-of-way abandonment of portions of 22nd Street. It's been reviewed by utility providers and by staff, and the recommendation is for abandonment of the right-of-way and retaining drainage and utility easements if necessary for future services. These areas of right-of-way would actually go back to the lot owners in Westgate Colony and essentially remain green space area or part of their yards with the easement retained as recommended. So staff's recommendation is for abandonment and retaining drainage and utility easements over the right-of-way area.
Any questions of staff?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Curiosity. When we do this, and you may not know the answer, Stan, but when we do this and that property is added to those lots, one, does the property appraiser take that into consideration? And two, how does that work with Save Our Homes 3%? Is it brought into the new value or the old value? And I'm just curious.
I don't know the answer to the second question. The first question is this goes through the property appraiser's mapping department, and it does become part of the lots, and they actually note on the parcel maps that it was abandoned right-of-way and so forth. I don't know the effect on the appraisal.
I'll ask David. Thank you.
Okay, let me open the public hearing. Anyone from the audience wish to be heard on this abandonment of public right-of-way? Yes, sir. Come in and let's have your name and address.
I'm Charles Strotter, and I live at 2176 80th Avenue, which is in Block 3, Lot 1, Track 1. I just have a few concerns and questions. I received notice of the meeting late Friday afternoon, and I emailed to be able to speak this morning. Things I'm concerned about is the right-of-way is to be changed, like you said, from a street right-of-way to an easement. The easement is to be added to our property. I take care of it as if it's my own already. But if there's going to be 35 foot of it, I think I should be able to get some benefit out of that 35 foot. My concern is what is the easement? The easement for drainage to the east of us. If you look at the Pine Creek condos, how much easement is there for the drainage? We have easement already added to our lots to the east, and there's like a 15-foot easement through there for drainage and for utilities. There is a drainage ditch there that needs to be there. It needs to be maintained, but I can't really see where they need 35 foot.
Stan, could you answer that?
If it's going to revert to us and we're going to pay taxes on it, I think they should settle for 15 feet or whatever. But I don't think we should have 35 foot added to our property, which I love to have.
I don't think there's
not
anything
pay taxes on it and not have any benefit out of it.
I don't think there's anything intended for it right now, is there, Stan? Stan, help us out.
Right, just a couple of items. One is this was recommended for staff review, through the staff review for the drainage and utility easement, and it is a pretty standard condition. I know you all see this quite a bit. I'm not aware of any plans for actual improvements. It is retaining interest for the county to have the future ability, if needed, to put in drainage and utility facilities. And it's not just water and sewer utilities. It could be electrical, cable, that sort of thing. In regard to what benefit a property owner gets, in having a property adjacent to them converted from a right-of-way to an easement, the real benefit is always setbacks for buildability. The setback, the new property line would actually, in this case, be, I'll just point to it here, that now be the north edge of the existing right-of-way line, and even though this area in between would be an easement, essentially the parcel owner here, this gentleman could build right up to what is now his existing parcel boundary, and he'd have a 35-foot setback to the new parcel boundary. So there is a benefit in terms of it increases the buildable area of the adjacent lot. I could not comment on behalf of the other departments in regard to whether they could approve a smaller or lesser easement. The recommendation for them is to retain the full area as an easement. Technically, I couldn't answer whether they could live with a lesser easement at this point.
Thank you, Stan. Mr. Trotter, anything else?
Well, my point is still, to the west of us, there's no such easement. To the east of us, there's no such easement.
Well, perhaps that's part of the reason they'd like to see one in there in case something comes up in the future that we might need it. That's the only answer I would have.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I understand exactly what you're saying. And if I could say the most difficult things that I've had to deal with probably as a commissioner is where there is private property with no easement or access on, whether it be drainage or trees or it just feels like that we're swimming with our hands tied, and to give up the opportunity to address a future need in there. I understand what you're saying, but from the commission side or from the county side, I believe prudence would suggest us to be able to retain the right to trespass on that property through the easement for utility and purposes.
Okay, but we have building rights right up to our property line.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If this is passed.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And the right to enjoy it. Just we have the right to come across it and utilize it for utilities and drainage.
I was going to say, we take care of it.
Absolutely.
We keep it up, and it is as if it was our yard.
Right. Well, now it is.
Okay. Thank you.
More so than ever.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to be heard on this right-of-way change? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Joseph Schulke, Schulkeville and Stoddard, Vero Beach, Florida, civil engineer, and I'm representing the applicant for the right-of-way abandonment. I didn't get the gentleman's last name. His first name, I believe, was Charles, but to try to answer some of the questions of maybe the board and Charles. There is a water main that goes between 79th and 80th Avenue in that right-of-way. There's presently a water main through there right now. It's probably about 15 foot to 20 foot north of their north property line, and then just north of that, just below the right-of-way line, is an existing drainage ditch which drains some of that subdivision properties to the east and some of the, just properties all around. So there's drainage facilities that need to be retained. In the northern, I'd call it about 10-15 feet, and then there's a water main just south of that. When we submitted the application, we originally requested that they retain, I think it was 20-foot easement on the northern 20-foot and leave the remainder, because we thought that might be enough. Because we had the same concerns that applicant owners that are going to get this property say, well, the whole thing's got an easement over it, and we thought that I think it was about 20 foot. I don't have the survey with me now. Would be adequate, and we also had a little stub out to the south where. Between lot lines where the easement was going in north-south direction to kind of accommodate everything. The utility department and drainage engineering department both wanted to retain the full 35 feet, and so we left it at that. So I just wanted to let you know what is there now. So there are some facilities. Also, as far as the benefit, your front property line is moved north, so you can build to that easement line. So you're getting, I think the side setback's 10 or 15 feet now? Actually, it's a front setback right now, I guess. So you've actually got 20 foot more buildable area where you could expand a house 20 foot to the north right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schulke. Anyone else on this item from the public? I'll close the public hearing. What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
Move approval.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Another public item, 9A2, an amendment to section 201.09D of the County Water and Sewer Services Ordinance.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities.
This particular amendment, we're asking for allows under certain rare and unique conditions the ability to finance for 20 years for a project. And this related back to a circumstance that happened at Lakewood Village Mobile Home Park. So we're changing the ordinance, so we're asking to open the public hearing and allow for this changing of the ordinance that allows for 20-year financing. It does have criteria attached to it. In other words, in order to qualify for this, A, you have to demonstrate financial need, and secondarily, you have to be in a position to have where the Florida Department of Environmental Protection has noted your water system, a private water system, as being such that it needs to connect to the county water system. So it's putting an encumbrance on these people to be in a position to make the change. It can't be just something arbitrary.
Good question.
Okay, yes, sir.
This is rental property, and the mobile homeowners there lease the land they're sitting on.
Yes.
But we're going to be making a loan to the mobile home owner and not the owner of the park. And for instance, or an example, if the park is to go out of business and they decide to build condominiums there, like they've done in other areas of Florida, are the tenants still responsible for that money, or is there backup?
In this particular case, as I understand the circumstances, the association physically owns the dirt. The association is the owner of the dirt. They actually currently have mortgages on the dirt itself.
Okay, I didn't realize it. So
Yes,
it's not a rental park any longer.
No, basically, the association owns the material dirt itself. In the process of this, we will record in the court a lien against the property itself. So in other words, if for whatever reason, some down the road it was ever sold, that lien would have to be satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to lien the individual lots, or are you going to just...
The association, the dirt itself. That's in essence what the individual homeowners will have to work out within the association their mechanism of repayment. Our contractual agreement will be with the association.
One lien?
Yes.
Thank you.
But the question, I think, was, do you lien an individual lot?
No. Now, basically, we own the dirt underneath the lot itself that was owned by the association.
Right. The association charges the tenant.
Right, and this is spreading that out over 20 years.
Exactly.
I got you.
Thank you.
That's good. Okay, any other questions of Eric? All right, thank you, Eric. This is also a public hearing. Is there anyone who wish to be heard? Anyone from Lakewood Park? No?
Village.
Okay. All right, I'll close the public hearing.
Second.
Move approval. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item B, public discussion items. Request to speak from Catherine Thomas, Florida Ridge. Ms. Thomas?
Good morning, Commissioners, staff. My name is Kathy Thomas. I live at 2109 Southeast 2nd Avenue. My neighbors and I are here before you again to ask that you make a final decision to demolish the old house at 2133 Southeast 1st Court. And if Kim could show those pictures, they're much better than what my photographer took.
I think, for clarification, Kathy, Mr. Chairman, I think at the last meeting, didn't we state that they needed to come in under the time frame for a building permit or it gets demolished?
I think we advised him he would have to come in. These pictures now are brand new pictures taken by our building department, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, we got it. Okay.
This is the 6th time this house issue has been before you. I hope by now you have all reviewed the tapes concerning this issue and have actually went out to our neighborhood and seen the old house. The owners, Mr. Dillon and Mr. Hamner, have made you, the commissioners, and the building department numerous promises over the past year, all of which have not been kept for various reasons. Lack of money being number one, and manpower number two. The rebuilding of this house from its very decayed state to occupancy as an affordable house was not a feasible idea given the best of circumstances, but the owners chose to attempt it anyway. We realize they have both time and money invested in this project. They gave you, the commissioners, their word that the house would be completed and ready for occupancy 1 year from the date of moving. If these two businessmen had worked as hard on this project for the entire year as they have worked since September, we probably would not be here today. Serious work did not start until the owners received the letter dated August 17, 2006, from the building department stating the county was considering condemnation of the house because no progress had been made since May 8, 2006. Now Mr. Dillon and Mr. Hamner are scurrying to finish by November 16th. In their rush to finish this project, they have changed the structural design of this house. It is now not being built according to the original plans. Originally, this old house was to be lifted onto 10-foot pylons or stilts. The owners say they could not get a crane as they were all in use in South Florida due to the hurricane. More likely, the house was not structurally sound enough to be lifted onto these pylons, or the owners could not afford the $1,000 an hour price tag of a crane. So it now sits on a stem wall, concrete blocks, which have failed inspection. The hurricane straps failed. We have windows installed that are not in the plans. The roof is not finished. The interior of the house, walls, electrical, plumbing, bathrooms, kitchen, and flooring are not complete. We are sure they will give you another excuse as to why they have not finished. If you reviewed the tapes of those past meetings where they came before you, they always had an excuse, always someone else's fault for their not doing as planned, and a promise they would do better. Today in our neighborhood sits a house only partially completed, almost 1 year from its arrival. It has not been rebuilt according to the original plans approved by a local architect on April 11, 2005, and approved by the building department on August 17, 2005. The owners have chosen to change these plans according to their needs rather than through the proper procedures of the building department. These two businessmen have not fulfilled their promises to you, the commissioners, or the building department. They have not completed this rebuilding in the time allowed, and they have not stuck to the original plans. This is the last time that you, the present Board of Commissioners, can vote on this item. You have all listened to Mr. Dillon and Mr. Hamner's promises. You have listened to their excuses why they couldn't keep these promises. You believed in their idea when you waived the performance bond. Now it will cost the county because Mr. Dillon and Mr. Hamner are not the businessmen they presented themselves to be and did not keep their word. Please do not let this become another Barton issue and go on for years. I can guarantee you that my neighbors and I will not give up. We will return as many times as necessary to settle this issue. It can be settled today. We are asking you not to extend their permits. Please issue a stop work order and vote yes for demolition of this property. My neighbors and I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I see our building official at the microphone. Bud, do you have some comments?
Yes, sir. Buddy Akins, building official, Indian River County. I conducted an inspection there yesterday, took those pictures that you were seeing. Foundation elements previously reported as deficient have been corrected in accordance with the design professional instructions. 6 new windows have been replaced. 6 windows have been replaced with new windows. Exterior has been cleaned and painted on one side and parts of 2 other sides. Roof covering of new 5E crimp metal is in the process of installation. A permit was issued for that, and an inspection was scheduled yesterday. Revised floor plan providing location of the kitchen and bathrooms and a modified floor plan has been submitted for review. Plumbing and drainage has been partially installed, but no permit has been issued and no inspections have been scheduled. The interior structural elements and finishes have not been addressed. There has been some further demolition and cleanup of the interior. There's no mechanical or electrical system components installed. There's no water supply system installed. Substantial construction and demolition debris remains scattered about the site. Scott Dillon was on site yesterday and was directed to clean up the site by properly placing all debris into the dumpster that was available on site that day.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
I think, Buddy, one question. All this, they have until what, November 16th?
That's correct.
To fall into compliance with everything you just said that they don't have?
That's correct.
Well, I make a motion this continues to be demolished, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion on the floor.
I'll second that for discussion.
Under discussion.
Mr. Akins, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is that we follow the demolition requirements that we set out August the 17th. If he were to be allowed to go forward, it would take 60 to 90 days to complete what he's got there, assuming he has the wherewithal and the capability to do that.
And if we move forward, how long would it take for our completion?
I'm sorry?
If we moved forward, how long would it take for our completion?
Us to demolish it?
Yes.
Less than 60 days.
Mr. Collins, what could they do legally to stop us from moving forward?
They could seek an injunction, but I'm not sure that they have any equitable argument given the time frame that they've had to conduct the work. But we've put them on notice that it was unsafe, that if it wasn't completed by the time frame allowed under our code, it would be demolished. At this point, I think we have to issue what is a notice for bids for demolition contractors and award the bid. And they would have to seek some kind of injunction against that action on whatever theory they might have.
Right. Mr. Chairman.
It would take longer than 60 days to get the bids in and complete the...
Typically not. No, sir. Typically that's done within 60 days.
Within 60 days?
Yes, sir.
But he could be done within 60 days?
Yes, sir.
I think the whole issue, and I don't think you all have been dealing with this as long as I have, and this has been a year that they've had an opportunity to get this house situated. I think, as Mrs. Thomas said, if they'd have started this work when they moved the house, we wouldn't be sitting here today dealing with this issue. I just want you all to envision this being next to your house and pick that feeling up. You know, they have come here 2 or 3 times, and I feel for them. I do. But they have not followed through what they said they were going to do each time they've come before this board saying that they're going to get it done. And I believe at the last meeting we made the motion to seek the demolition, and once again here they are back. That's my feelings with it. I've been dealing with the residents down in Florida Ridge, Kathy, for the last year, and I truly feel for you all and appreciate the hard work that you brought forward to try to get your neighborhood back in order.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's a tough decision, but I think that really, we've got to make the decision about whether or not, whenever somebody does something like this, and of course next time they'll have the bond in place, but how much are we going to be willing to work with them in a community that, they're clearly affecting the quality of life of the neighbors. This project could have been done properly. It could have been done right. It could have been done in the time frame that was allocated. And I think we need to send the message that all of them from this point forth will be done properly in the time frame. And I think that we've realized an error in the ways by waiving the bond, and we will have that in place. Like I said earlier, we need to move forward with this.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, I think we... I just hate to see whatever's there torn down. I know it's a problem, and no, I wouldn't want it next to my house. But still, there's some value here, and these guys could possibly get it done in 60 days. I know that they haven't been, excuse me, it hasn't been that way in the past, I understand that, but still, I would like to give them another 60 days.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Gary?
I have a question. An interesting point that Wesley just made, that this would send a message that everybody's feet would be held to the fire, so to speak. I don't know if those are exact words on a year, but my question is to the attorney also. I know many of these demolitions that have come in front of this board in the past have been given extensions and extensions. And my question is there an additional liability, or would this weigh in their favor to get an injunction, the fact that we're not consistent? I think one that with Ernestine that was in front of us a while back, we've given extension 2, 3, or 4 times.
I think
Bob could probably better answer that. I'm going by memory.
I think, Gary, the difference in those that come before us for demolition and this one is they've had a time frame. They've had a year to do this. The houses that come before us nothing's been done. They applied for a permit to do this and didn't do it. That's the issue that I have with it. If they'd have done all this within the time frame of the year, I wouldn't be having this discussion.
Yeah, and I don't argue that point at all, Commissioner. And in fact, my gut feeling on most any of these things is to say, here's the time frame, and if you can't meet it, that's too bad. But over and over and over again, we haven't done that. We haven't been consistent, and I'm a little concerned about our consistency. And obviously they've worked probably harder in the last 2 weeks than they have in the last 12 months.
No doubt. All right, any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. Would you repeat the motion so we're all clear? Could you repeat it? Or
the motion was to continue to move forward with the demolition.
One question before we vote.
Is that the second?
Yes, that is the second.
Yes, sir.
To reiterate what somebody else said, if it takes 60 days and they bring this into compliance within that 60 days, would that improve their opportunity for, well, hopefully we need an injunction, but no, let's take the best case scenario. Let's suppose that they get a licensed contractor, go down there and work with them to complete this in 60 days. And let's say that before it's demolished, that the house is completed, presentable, and safe in 60 days. Where are we with the demolition at that point?
If it hadn't been demolished, we can stop the process at any point.
Yeah. So in effect, they're getting another 60 days to bring this into compliance.
Yeah, I think if you went down both tracks at the same time, if we go ahead and get the bids for demolition and they keep working, when we go to award the bid, if the board feels at that time that they've reached, which will probably be pretty close to 60 days, 45 days after, I don't think we can start the process. They do have the right through November 16th. So I think we've got to be very careful and follow our rules. And on November 16th, we start the process of advertising for someone to do the demolition. Probably be back in front of you in 45 days. You can review the house again at that time, and we'll be ready to award the bid if you're not satisfied. And I think that might, the only concern I have is we keep bidding these demolitions and pulling them off, and we may not be able to get bids in the future. But we've bid a lot. We've bid a lot of them, and then said, okay, we're not going to do them, and cut the list short.
Okay, I was just curious as to, if the house was completed in 60 days or the 45 days or whatever, then it wouldn't be demolished if it was. But if it's not, then it'll be demolished. And so, in essence, they've still got a little more time to work on it if they so choose to do so. And so I'll support the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. I think everyone understands the motion. All in favor? I'm sorry, is there someone in the audience? Bob?
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. Art, you've pointed out where this property now has value. Is it now, can't the builders get a bond now and put a bond up now, and instead of having the taxpayers at some future date pick up the tab for demolishing
they could, but why would they step up and say, I'd like to put $20,000 up since you're fixing to tear this down and charge me for it?
I understand what you're saying.
Well, the other thing, there'll be a lien on the property, so they can't sell the property if it's demolished until they pay the lien.
Thank you.
Yeah,
looks like a bond.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 4-1. Okay, let's see. I think we have Brian Hetty under public discussion items.
No, 9B2, Mr. Richard Bialski.
I'm sorry. Where are we? 9B2. that's where we are.
Commissioners, Richard Bialowski, Oyster Shell Lane, Vero Beach. I appreciate Commissioner Wheeler helping get this on the agenda today. We are planning a conference on December 6th, and for some strange coincidence, Mr. Swift, who David Eder, myself, and Bob Swift are putting this together, wasn't at your meeting last week. He's not here today. It's probably a rare occurrence that he isn't sitting out there. And you all scheduled a meeting with the St. John's Water Management District for December 6th. It conflicts with what we're doing. I had...
Could we please...
We had planned to ask for a spot on next week's agenda to tell you about the conference, to introduce it to the new commissioners as well. Since they're here, if you wouldn't mind, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're planning and why we're asking you to consider changing your meeting with St. John's. I said many months ago at one of these meetings that an old story, if two men are fighting on the street, which person is at fault? And the answer is it's the Director of Education. That we have gone through a very contentious period here in this county over growth issues. And even though it's contentious, we all seem to agree on a couple of key points. One is that we all favor controlled growth and we all favor quality development. But I'm not sure that any of us are absolutely clear what that means, or I'm certainly sure that there's no consensus as to what that means. And in that context, I think it's also clear that people know exactly what they don't want Indian River County to become, but there's no clear consensus about what we could become and how we could get there. And clearly, what's missing is educating ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean you as the decision makers, I mean we as the voters, I mean we as the planners, designers, staff members, and last but absolutely not least, the development community, who, as a member of the development community, and I have to say we're more part of the problem than we are we have been more part of the problem than we have been part of the solution. But I don't think for any lack of wanting to be part of the solution. I think, again, it's just some lack of a comprehensive vision that everyone can buy into. So David and Bob and I got together one day and decided, having done the conference with Ian Lockwood, which I think was important. I don't know that all his conclusions were agreed to, but I think it was an important conference, and I think it interjected a lot of thinking, new thinking into the process. We thought we really need to build on this, and we decided to put together an organization which we're calling the Forum for a Sustainable Future. It's essentially agenda neutral. Now, clearly, the three of us are developers, but we are trying to create an advisory board that is very, very broad-based, very big tent, including members of the Neighborhood Association, the AIA, the Chamber of Commerce, really anyone who will help and participate in this and help us create some ideas of topics for conferences, lists of speakers, and basically a platform, a forum where we can discuss the possibility of the future. You all have workshops from time to time, but the workshops are usually staff making a presentation and all us locals getting up and voicing our opinion, and we don't always have the opportunity to hear experts. Bob Keating told me after, is Bob still here? No. After the Ian Lockwood seminar, that he said, as a planner, we go to these meetings all the time, and the public doesn't get a chance to participate. So we plan this for December 6th. We have at the Vero Beach Museum of Art from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock. We have Charles Bohl, who is the director of Miami School of Architecture's night program in community building. I don't know if you all appreciate how important the University of Miami has been in the whole paradigm shift of planning, and it's had an impact that's worldwide. It's affected new towns in England, in China, as well as Florida. Todd Zimmerman, who is the reigning guru of marketing of traditional new communities, who understands market trends, the public preferences, and the planning issues that go with them. Rick Hall, who, like Ian Lockwood, is a transportation planner, not a traffic engineer, but a transportation planner, who is actually the editor of the ITE, the International Institute of Traffic Engineers Manual. We have Vince Graham, who is the developer of a very well-received traditional development in North Carolina called Ion. We have Lynn Richards, and I think Lynn Richards is particularly apropos of the reason why you could postpone your meeting with St. John. Lynn is from the Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C. She's an expert in land use planning issues and as they relate to environmental issues, and specifically water quality in terms of water runoff, drinking water, and those issues. I think she'll speak to things that would be probably very helpful going into your meeting with St. John's. And Bill Spakowski, who is a developer who will be speaking on partnerships, codes, incentives, and impediments, incentives for proper planning, impediments for things you don't want to see. This is the meeting on the December 6th. We have a vision of future meetings that would include a presentation on architectural review, form-based codes, and design centers, a conference on mending patterns, environment and land use, transportation again, incentives and impediments. We've been talking to the people at Windsor about having a conference on new urbanist villages at Windsor. It won't be totally in praise of Windsor. It'll be critical. It'll be pro and con of Windsor, but a chance for the public. And they seem to be open to having that meeting there. And any other topics that might get suggested to us. As I said, we can probably promise you that we'll be the usual contentious guys who get up here and have contrary opinions to what y'all would like to do over the years to make your life miserable. But as an organization, we intend to make this completely agenda neutral and open to everyone, so we can all learn. Maybe in learning something, there is a shared vision that we all agree to, and maybe there's an opportunity to do something wonderful. I was just reading the other day about John Nolan, who was probably the premier planner in the United States in the 20s, and Nolan is responsible for a number of communities in Florida, notably the initial St. Petersburg plan. And he said back in 1926, he said, Florida is an interesting laboratory. It has some of the best examples of new planning, and it has some of the worst examples. And I think that still remains true, and I think we have the choice of becoming one of the worst examples or one of the best examples. It's clear that we would all agree that we would want to be the latter. That's the intention of what we're doing. I have a package here for all of you. It's open to the public. We're only charging $25 for the conference. That includes lunch. Public officials, it's only $15. Out-of-county residents, $50. The American Institute of Architects is giving us 6 learning units, which is a lot of local learning units for $25. So hopefully our silent design community, and we have a very, very capable design community here that most of you never see because they never come out from behind locked gates. Hopefully they'll be drawn into this discussion and conversation. So we've put a lot into this. We're doing it in partnership with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, who has put an immense amount of time and probably money, if time is money, into this, and would be fairly unhappy with us if we couldn't say that y'all would possibly be there for the afternoon. We have speakers coming from literally all over the state and the country. We've bought plane tickets, reserved hotel rooms. We apologize. Actually, I had planned to meet with Commissioner Wheeler. I had put in a call, but busy schedules and whatnot, that slipped by. I wish we had, well, let me put it this way, next time we will secure the date in advance, but I'm certainly hoping that you would be able to change that meeting with St. John's to a near but future date and would be able to attend the meeting. I'll leave copies here. I have enough for all the current commissioners, all the new commissioners, save Commissioner Fleischer, who I gave one to on the way in. And I hope you'll make the change, and I certainly hope that you will all attend and encourage the staff to attend as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bialowski. Since I've been chairman, I've been trying to differentiate between a 3-minute speech and a presentation, and the county administrator hasn't been able to do that either. So I would recommend presentations belong under presentations, and this is a matter by the public here.
Well, I think Mr. Chairman,
Speaking about 3 minutes, where's Brian?
He's right there.
Mr. Hetty, I think we have you down for it.
Mr. Chairman, if we could have a little discussion on that.
On what?
On the presentation.
Okay.
Or the 3 minutes.
I think the bottom question...
For Gary.
Yeah. Well, no, I talked to Mr. Bialowski the other day and told him that obviously I didn't have the authority to change workshops or schedule the other 4 commissioners. And I said that you need to bring this to the county commission and let the commission decide what they would like to do. I think both of these situations are very important. And my question would be to staff is, and I don't know where, I knew we had a workshop scheduled. I don't know what's gone into that workshop, who's been invited, how flexible it is or whatever. But I know the workshop with the water is extremely important because of particularly because of what we've just gone through with the conservation lands and the reservoir. But I also see a great value in what's going to be presented with these people coming in from around the country. And I'm just wondering if there's some way to coordinate the both. And of course, with Mr. Bialowski's situation, there are several people coming in from around the country. And I don't know how flexible we are on the workshop. And I didn't know when I suggested that he approach the commission on this.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. What we have done currently up to date at this point, we've had discussions with St. John's Water Management District. We've met in Palatka regarding this meeting. We do have individuals from St. John's that have been scheduled to appear on the 6th. In addition to that, we have invited, and we understand there may be a couple commissioners from Brevard County that would be interested in attending. The real question is, can we shift it to perhaps December 7th? We're going to make some calls today and see if we can. We've done some already on this thing. I will tell you that some of the staff that we did want from St. John's have a conflict on the next day on the 7th. From a staff perspective, we could shift it. I can't guarantee that you'll get all the individuals you'd like from St. John's Water Management District, but I think we could shift it if that was a desire of the commission on this. I think what we've tried to do is to bring in individuals that we believe have the most information about what's coming in the state's future as far as water supply. But we could make an attempt to try to bring as many people as we could. One thing, I guess, that would give you a little bit of flexibility is this particular meeting is going, the workshop, if you will, for the water supply is the first of what we hope to have 3. So this is kind of a kickoff workshop. Its intent is to kind of give you an overview of what's happening in Florida, what's the planning associated with this process. So we would give it our best shot to try to still get the experts here to kind of be in a position to kind of facilitate where we're heading on this process. And we can try to make it work. I just can't guarantee, exactly who would be there and who would not be there.
I know the board was concerned because we've been trying to set this workshop for 6 months. That's why we just moved it today. I mean, you could move it to January. We could try and work, but I know the board was wanting to discuss this issue.
And this isn't an all-day workshop. How
this particular workshop with the alternative water supply, we're trying to compress it into 2 hours. It's from 2 to 4 in the afternoon.
We could still at some point attend that. I don't want to move this at all. This has been a long time coming, and it's a specific need that we need to know. That's broad-based, and we can slip in and out all day. I'm not sure we could stay all day anyway, but we would have opportunity to do both.
Mr. Chairman, where is yours?
Museum.
At the Museum for the Arts, so it would, okay, I remember that now.
And what time does our meeting start?
2 to 4. It's 2 o'clock, yeah.
I would propose we keep ours exactly like it is and come in and out of those meetings. And what we miss, we could catch up with you. You could let us know what it is, I'm sure.
Perhaps what we could do is maybe shift it from 3 to 5, perhaps. I don't know if that's possible on the St. John side. And then we can adjust perhaps some of the timing.
I don't think we're the only people coming to this.
No,
and I don't think we're the main people.
Floating ideas.
Yeah.
Keeping an open mind on trying to do as much as possible.
I got that, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
But would like to keep this as is.
Yes, ma'am.
if you don't mind.
You know, I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can be here anytime, Wesley.
Yeah, I think both meetings have interest. If I have to pick between one of the two, I'd go with the St. John's with the workshop. But I do wonder if and I kind of like Wesley's idea, because I'd like to attend this one, and that would give me an additional hour over there if we could move it up an hour. I mean, that, we're looking 60 minutes, but it would give you enough time to, if that's possible. I don't know how, moving an hour in a meeting shouldn't necessarily be a problem. Most people have probably marked off that afternoon anyway for the meeting.
Yeah, I don't think, frankly, and I don't want to speak for some of the individuals that are going to be coming that we've invited from Brevard County and that sort of thing, but I would agree with you that more likely is not those from St. John's have blocked the afternoon for this. We've talked to them. They know the importance of this. Some of the issues that we've talked about, you will have already seen and will be seeing in the future, the 6,000 acres / 3,000 acres, the conservation.
That's very important.
That is an issue that they're aware of, and they may discuss that at this point.
And you're both going to have a test on this afterwards.
That's good.
It'll be multiple choice, though.
Questions or?
No.
I've been tested today.
I don't care as long as it's multiple choice.
I would say that more likely is not, and that changing at an hour shouldn't be a tremendous difficulty if that's what the commission desires on this.
Just add a little flexibility.
Could we get a position whether we can ask them to move it an hour or not? I'll tell you where I'm at. If we can move it an hour, I'd be happy. If we can't move it an hour with all the players, and
Well, why don't we do this? If the commission would like to change it, we'll make that happen.
Yeah, why don't we just say that we'll attempt to have it moved from 3 to 5, and we'll get back with you.
But we will have it that day.
Yes.
Yes.
We're not
So
gonna-
nobody's in favor of canceling it.
Right. And if y'all have to leave early or come late, then you have to.
Well, we can be there. It gives us. I can go to this one and be back here by 3
Yes.
and get most of what's going. But the growth issues are also extremely important. And
What was your opinion?
But not as important as water.
You're opposite than Gary?
Although they're intertwined.
If you're opposite with Gary, I'm with you.
You heard what my opinion was.
I'm with Sam.
We'll make it work.
What do you and I agree on, Tom?
Welcome to the school board. The old school board. Okay, anything further, Eric? No? Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
All right. We didn't end up with any motions or anything, did we, guys?
No, just.
Good thing. All right, is Brian Hetty? Brian?
I might have to start watching TV.
Hello, Commissioners. The last meeting, I was invited back to attend after the 27th. I'm early. Sorry about that, Mr. Newberger.
Oh, well, I needed to see you one more time.
But I will come back after the 27th anyway, just to make sure that, Anyway, earlier in this meeting, there was a discussion on the importance of procedures, and citizens, builders, developers, property owners, whoever, I assume county staff, procedures are important. And at the last meeting, I was here about procedures, and more specifically, constructive notice of a hearing in which a county resident was found guilty of a couple of violations, but my presentation to you was that he did not receive constructive notice of the hearing, and certainly it's important if you're going to put somebody on trial that they be notified that there's going to be a trial. Here's the date, here's the time, here's the place, be there or suffer the consequences. At any rate, after my presentation, your staff came up to the podium and they said that the county attorney's office said that the respondent was in fact served by the sheriff, that constructive notice had been handed to the respondent, and I replied that I would ask for the production of that document that demonstrated that, and I'm here to tell you that that document was never produced. Chapter 119 request, and day after day of email produced nothing. There was no document produced. So clearly, and if it pops up today, I can tell you that clearly there was a problem with production of the document. At any rate, after county attorney's office spoke, your staff from that particular department in the county stood up and said that he wasn't sure whether or not Mr. Hetty had the complete file, and that there was a file that he named 3 different places, and he didn't know where I had filed my original Chapter 119 request to inspect the public record. And he assured me that his file did, in fact, contain the mentioned documents, and I can tell you that was not produced. He further testified that subsequent to the county attorney's office, the procedure is that his office gets a signed copy of that notification, and that it was in the file. And again, I asked for production. It was not produced. He continued and said that if they don't get it signed, it's a misdemeanor, and they pursue that. Well, there were no misdemeanor charges ever filed against the respondent, so I would offer up that that's probably some proof that the citation was in fact never served. Your staff continued and said that you had testimony, was at the last meeting, from the attorney's office, that there was sheriff's delivery, and all of these documents are in the appropriate files, and all I had to do is ask. I asked. I followed up later on in the day with an email. I followed up the next day with an email. I showed up at the county administrator's office, and I think that this meeting today just belabors the point that at the last meeting we probably could have taken care of this. There was a $200 fine imposed on this this citizen for a couple of violations for which due process never happened. He never had the opportunity to defend himself. I asked for at the last meeting, and I would repeat my request, that the $200 fine be sent back to this citizen, that the judgment be rescinded, and that if they want to follow up, if the county wants to follow up and charge somebody with violation, they're certainly at liberty to do that at any time, but that constructive notice be given to any and all citizens that are there to appear before any county hearing, that they know about the county hearing, and that we be sure, as a government, we be sure that citizens' due process rights are protected. And again, I would ask that the fine be rescinded or sent back, that the judgment be rescinded, and I would ask that again today.
Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Hetty did ask for that document, and we were looking for it and couldn't locate it in our files. The sheriff has their own file system. We contacted the sheriff. Part of the holdup is we contacted the sheriff to talk to the gentleman that we thought served the notice. He was on vacation. They have their own files. Obviously, the sheriff's office keeps their own files. We did not have a copy of that document that we thought we had. They thought they had in the file. That's why Mr. Hetty did not receive it. And I want to apologize for not getting back to him. We were I had my staff searching for that document and contacting the sheriff's office. Don't forget, this was on a Tuesday, and one of the problems we have, this was on a Tuesday, and we had to bring a lot of things back, and the deadline for us, and it was a short week because of the holiday, we have to get them in by Wednesday. So, and I think, and Mike Zito has been working on this, and I think you'll go with the process. I think there's a legal process that has to be followed with this.
Thank you, Joe. I do appreciate your apology, but I mean, what we had in front of the commission, lady and gentlemen, was a public records request made on the fly at the dais. That is a very unconventional way to make a public records request. Although the Board of County Commission is the ultimate authority, each department is the custodian of its own records, and when you make a public records request, it should be made to the department that is the custodian of that record. That's all we had last Tuesday. Had a little bit of grandstanding and whatnot, but we had a public records request that we diligently searched for in response to, made on the dais. So we did make a diligent effort to find that document and ultimately did not produce it. That's level one. Level two is apparently there's an appeal or an attempt to appeal of a final order of the Code Enforcement Board. I believe there's a procedure for that. I believe Chapter 162 has a section titled Appeal.
and it's to the circuit court. Now, you have ultimate authority if you want to rescind the Code Enforcement Board's action here today. I don't know if Mr. Collins wants to weigh in on your authority to do that, but, I mean, this is not something where the ball was hidden. It's simply our response to a public records request. Number one. Level two is there an appeal of the order? Because maybe there's legal defenses to that appeal that, if we're going to talk about due process, the county's entitled to prepare for. The only thing better than constructive notice is actual notice. Maybe the county believes there was plenty of actual notice because the respondent was running around complaining and lobbying to everyone in the building about the substance of the matter, and then wants to complain that he didn't know about it. To me, there may be some legal defenses here.
I got a question. It appears that there's no documentation that actually said he was served, at least written. And or maybe it's a possible solution. There was a violation committed, based on what I understand, and he was told to cease what he was doing, didn't, and that was a violation. Maybe a solution would be, and I throw this out for legal opinion, I guess, is to give him back the $200, because there is no, and start the process again. The evidence is still there, the offense still occurred, and there's nothing wrong with going through the process again and reserving him and putting him back in front of the Code Enforcement Board. My concern is that nobody's been able to find, as Mr. Hetty pointed out, nobody's been able to find a document that he was actually served at this point, which gives me pause because, you know, I lose records, but government shouldn't lose records.
Yes, sir. I don't know that the document ever existed and was lost.
Yeah.
You know, that's whether there was proper service affected on this respondent is a legal question.
But it just seems to me that if my proposal would work, it'd be a much simpler solution than going through this week after week. You know, give him back the $200, refile the charges, reserve him, and
I agree. And the issue of service, sir, is mooted by the payment of the fine. So staff never really had an opportunity or was requested an opportunity to investigate whether proper service was obtained or not, because the case was closed through payment of the fine, which is an inherent admission of the underlying conduct. Apparently it was paid under protest. I don't know what that means.
Well, my understanding was the payment of the fine was to eliminate the fine multiplying on a daily basis.
Understood. So
that it just digs a hole deeper and gets more confused. And
understood.
The applicant, what's interesting here is the applicant has a procedure to go through. The gentleman, which isn't Mr. Hetty, has a process to go through. And we're circumventing the process that the board has put in front of people. It's kind of very strange. And they get a hearing then. You're going to encourage everyone who gets a code enforcement violation to come here.
Rather, you know, I think we have a responsibility to document everything we do as government. And it hasn't been documented apparently very well that he's been served. Nobody's been able to produce that. I'm not saying to circumvent or anything else. I'm just saying that we got a situation here where, you know, let's go back to square one, start over again.
That would certainly be simpler than arguing about an appeal, whether an appeal is timely, whether the underlying service was appropriate to even get to an appeal. I think that's the simplest solution. Send him back the money, recite him, have the hearing. The hearsay that I'm getting is that he was offered a citation and refused to accept it. He was sent the mail, the certified mail was refused. So it's problematic getting service on this individual, but that would be the cleanest, simplest way to clear up the defect that the files did not show service, even though he paid the fine.
I thought staff said last week that if they don't sign the citation, that's a misdemeanor.
It is.
But a misdemeanor's never been filed in this case, correct?
Again, hearsay, whoever was attempting the service was being transferred to another division. The papers got transferred somewhere else and never followed through on. But
it's kind of like
it's hard to run these things down in a day or a week.
Have we ever heard from the applicant?
No.
Do we even know,
You're hearing from the applicant right now. I'm representing the applicant.
Do we
went
have
through.
anything in writing that you are, I mean, from him?
Well, I can certainly give you a copy of my retainer agreement. Do you request that from everyone that represents anyone at this dais?
I'm just saying it's sort of muddy, and it's been muddy from the start.
Okay.
I'm just asking for
Well, I
clarification.
think that what you're doing is you're throwing in a little bit more to make it mud. You know, there was testimony here that the request for Chapter 119 was made at this podium. The fact is that the request was followed up with an email later on that day, on Tuesday, that it was followed up on subsequent days. It's not like the request was just mentioned here. That's just not the case. They talk about appeal rights. Well, you got to get to the hearing before you get to the appeal rights.
Let me try something, Brian. If I may, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I make a motion to rescind the $200 and that we refile and have a paper trail.
I will second that for discussion.
Go ahead.
Yes, I feel like, I mean, it's not an issue of the money. I understand it's an issue of the principle, and I do understand that. However, when you do look at the financial side of it, the time that is taken away from our Assistant County Administrator to be able to handle this, for us to back up and do it properly, and if there is a true infraction, let's go on ahead and cite the gentleman, move forward, dot the i's, cross the t's, and let's get this done so that we can move on to more important things.
Yeah, it's really immaterial to us. I mean,
That's kind of, and let's clean it up. I'm not saying he's innocent or guilty. I'm just saying we can't find a document. If Will says it's the cleanest way to move forward, I'm ready to move forward and get on to the next action on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, we're not here to discuss the merits. My
Absolutely.
point was that there was a request to speak under saving taxpayer dollars, and 3 minutes later, we had an on-the-dais public records request with staff scurrying throughout the building to make a response. It's just not fair.
And I agree
Did you
with
say
that.
that the sheriff was unable to find a document, or they're still looking for it?
No, the sheriff did not produce a proof of service affidavit in the traditional sense, no.
But didn't I see an envelope where it says rejected? Or
That was the certified mail required under Chapter 162 in the Code Enforcement Board hearing process.
does that not serve as service?
You would think so. I was going to say, Your
I would
Honor,
think
since
so,
this
but
is kind
you're
of
an
a
attorney,
courtroom
tell me.
today, but, Mr. Chairman, you would think so. However, a Florida citizen actually has the right to refuse a code enforcement citation. I think it's a glitch in the statute, and that sends staff scurrying to post notices on their front door and to publish in the newspaper, and it's the substance of the law procedurally is not.
Well, if we serve him again, he's going to refuse it again, right?
No, there's a difference between serving a summons and trying to give him a registered letter.
Correct.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a violation to refuse a registered letter. It is a summons.
Yes, sir. There are alternative methods of service under the code
Let's do
enforcement
clean it
statute.
up then.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I assume you're ready to vote?
Can I just ask Mr. Davis and Mr. Wheeler?
You can call me Gary.
No,
I prefer Mr.
You want to play like this? We can do this. No, if we could please have a process. I agree with our attorney that this winging it and I know you wanted to have it properly done too. That we have really, if you request something from the podium here, that you respond in writing. There needs to be a process we follow and not circumvent it. And I think our attorney has told us that, and we continuously do this. And then we end up in a situation that is just unnecessary.
And prudence would suggest that absolutely all Chapter 119s being, however, the statute does not say they have to be. They can do a 119.
We can have a policy, and that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, but our policy can't supersede state
I'm not going
statute.
to argue with you. We can have a policy.
I think, from our standpoint as a staff, we try and let anyone get up here and try and get an idea what they're going to talk about. I can't, it's not, we tell them there's a 3-minute limit, and they get up here, they talk until the board tells them not to. And it would be easier on us. I mean, we're trying to get everyone through the system. We're getting a lot of last-minute requests on Wednesdays late, and we are trying to get them on, and if we miss one, we'll bring it. But I can't guarantee you. Lately we're trying to put an agenda together quick, and one thing is I think we shouldn't make decisions based on these forms that are filled out. I think we're going to have to be careful in the future.
One of the things, and not to, although it is extending this conversation, but Mr. Hetty gave me copies of documents that apparently he got, and I don't know whether he did an official public request or if he just went in prior to him coming here last week. He had the documents that he had to request before he stood up here and asked for. So I don't know the situation, but I think we're beating a dead horse here. Let's just, if we can, we'll pass this, go back and redo it. The gentleman will be in front of the Code Enforcement Board, and a fine will be levied or whatever they decide to do. My concern is all personalities and everything else aside, is that I think government's got a bigger responsibility than the individual to follow procedure and document everything and make sure it's done properly.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right, and it hasn't, apparently, if it's been documented well, it hasn't been discovered at this point. So, and I'm not looking to throw blame anyplace. Let's just let it go back through the process again.
Let's get on with it.
Any other discussion on this molehill?
Molehill.
I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, say
Good to
aye.
have you back, Brian.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We'll take a 10-minute break.
Aye. Good to have him back.
Gary, I think it's time to do replacement. Thank you, Sandra.
Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please. We're at item 9C1, which is public notice items, notice of items to come up in the future. Number one is a public notice of a public hearing for November 21st, 2006 to amend Section 101.02.1 of the Indian River County Code. Item 10, County Administrator's Matters. I guess we'll have to wait.
He's with Wesley. Move on to item number 11 and come back to it.
We'll go on to item number 11, Community Development. Departmental Community Development. Consideration of proportionate fair share agreement with Rolock, LLC. Mr. Keating?
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. This is your first prop share mitigation agreement that you've seen. Mm-hmm. I think you remember we talked about this earlier this year. The legislature in 2005 approved Senate Bill 360, and that requires all local governments in the state to enact proportionate fair share mitigation ordinances by December 1st of this year. The county enacted its prop share ordinance back last April. And since April, we've been discussing proportionate share with a number of applicants. And this is the first applicant who is actually making it to the Board of County Commissioners with a prop share agreement. We actually had two others that were scheduled to come today, but at the last minute, they both applicants decided to postpone their prop share until the December 5th meeting. So we've got 2 more coming to you at that time. I think you know that the proportionate share process is a mechanism whereby an applicant who has a deficient link, whose project will impact a deficient link, can go forward if that link is in the county's 5-year capital improvements program, and if the applicant agrees to enter into a prop share agreement and pay a proportionate fair share mitigation fee. And that's the case here. In this case, the applicant is proposing to build about 21,000 square feet of contractors' trades use, and the proposed location of this is at 490 Old Dixie. And he's in for site plan approval, and in order for him to get approved, he has to enter into a proportionate share agreement to mitigate the impacts that he's creating on a portion of 27th Avenue. He's impacting the portion of 27th Avenue from Oslo Road to 4th Street. So basically, he submitted a prop share application. Planning staff and traffic engineering staff reviewed the application, and we determined that link is eligible for a prop share, and we worked through the numbers. You can see in your backup that the proportionate fair share fee is a pretty healthy amount. In this case, the applicant is contributing just 2 peak hour directional trips to that segment of 27th Avenue, and his proportionate fair share fee is $32,670. And that represents the gross prop share amount, which is about $33,500, less the traffic impact fee credit. And that comes out to the $35,600 amount. The applicant has also, at this point, paid his other traffic impact fees, all of his other impact fees, and his capacity charges. And when the agreement is approved today, he will be vested with what we call a CCI 5 concurrency certificate, which will give him a 5-year vesting for his project. But he will have paid all of his fees, and he will have paid this additional proportionate share amount that will go towards paying for that improvement. There is a copy of the proportionate fair share agreement in your backup, and staff recommends that you approve that agreement and authorize the chairman to sign it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, just real quick, Mr. Keating, this is probably an obvious question, but there's been several proportionate share agreements that have been signed throughout the state. I assume we've looked at those, taken the good things out of them, and add them to the good things that we were able to come up with for what we see in front of us?
Actually, I don't know if there's been much prop share throughout the state. We did use the model ordinance that Cutter, Center for Urban Transportation Research, prepared in conjunction with DOT in structuring our ordinance, but we came up with our own agreement, and the attorney's office actually drafted the agreement, and other staff has looked at it and are satisfied with it.
Wasn't the neighbors conference that we went to, wasn't there for some proportionate share agreements as templates in there for us to look at also? At that conference?
There are some agreements, those are developers' agreements. I can't remember whether any were proportionate fair share under 360. I'll take a look at those.
Okay. He's on Old Dixie, right?
Yes.
And you're talking about 27th Avenue, 2 trips?
Yes.
He's almost exactly due west of the area he's affecting.
Yes, yes. Basically,
it sounds like the P&Z, but this sounds like a long stretch from Old Dixie to 27th Avenue on the same latitude.
It's where the failing links are, though.
Yeah.
Correct. Every project applicant that comes in has to prepare a traffic impact analysis, and he has to assign his traffic out on the network, and in this case, the applicant is impacting that deficient link.
Okay. I'm not going to... Where's Chris Moore? I need to pick him apart. Okay. I'm sorry. Bob?
Bob Johnson, Corwin subdivision. Have we gone through the steps to approve the ordinance for prop share? We've had our hearings and so forth, and all this is...
One of the first in the state.
It just seems like $27,000 is hardly enough to pay for prop share for the link from Oslo Road.
Well, it's 2 trips, and it's only one small portion of what that's going to cost.
It's a good question. Answer that, Bob. I mean, it's just so perception is.
Yeah, it's the way this is structured is the segment of Oslo Road that we're talking about from the segment of 27th Avenue that we're talking about from Oslo Road to 4th Street is about 1.5 miles. The project that we have programmed is going to cost about $10 million. And by the way, I'd invite Chris Moore to come up and add anything to what I'm going to say.
He's fighting the urge.
But this project isn't programmed until the 5th year. So traffic engineering, when they look at what the cost is, they grow the cost of the project out 5 years using an annual percentage increase of about a little over 7.5%. So the total project cost is coming to about $15 million in the 5-year category. By contributing 2 trips to this link, and with a service volume increase of about 900 hourly directional trips, this project is really using up 0.22% of the additional capacity that will be provided from the 2 to 4 lane improvement for the road. So when you look at 0.22% of the grown $15 million cost, this is the proportionate share when the traffic impact fee credit is lessed out using the methodology that we have.
Yeah. Chris?
Right. Yes, it's Chris Mora, Assistant Public Works Director. Bob's right. If you look at the whole project, it's $15 million to create 900 new trips. They only need 2 of those 900 new trips, so they're paying 2 900ths of that $15 million. So, yeah, it's a small amount, only $32,000 is their share, but again, they're only contributing a very small share of the 900 trips that will be created when the roads widen. So it's a proportionate share of that cost.
So in 5 years, when we get ready to build this road, the money will be there.
That's the game plan, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So following along, I'm trying to think, okay, that we don't wait 5 years to build the road. There's a developer that's coming in with a developer's agreement for this project, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Well, there's I think you're talking about the link of 27th Avenue further south, south of Oslo Road. This is from Oslo Road north to 4th Street. Okay. That agreement with Mark Brackett and also with Jerry Swanson will be concentrating on the segment south of Oslo.
Okay.
Yeah, as you remember, there are 2 flavors of prop share. There is the prop share that's really mandatory for the county to enter into agreements for, and that's when the roadway project is on the county's 5-year capital improvements program. Then there's the discretionary prop share agreement, and that's when the roadway project is not on the 5-year CIP. We've been working on several proposed prop share / developers agreements where the roadway projects are not on the 5-year CIP, and as Chris indicated, 2 of them involve 27th Avenue south of here. Those are a little more complicated and a little more involved, and we're spending a lot of time and effort trying to get those to fruition. But there's still a little work done, but we're hopeful that you're going to see some of those pretty soon.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Any further discussion? We have a motion?
Yes, I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. So we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's back up to item 10. County Administrator had an item that he added to the agenda, status report, 5925 37th Street for Residential Treatment Center.
During the break, I put on your dais copies of an informational item regarding the status report of the site at 5925 37th Street. You may remember at the meeting on November 7th last week, Michael O'Hare spoke before the board And at issue is a staff interpretation of the use of the site on 37th Street, formerly used by Alka Hope, currently owned by the source. And that determination is the subject of an appeal that's working its way through the process, as we reported to you last week. That appeal will be heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their next available meeting, December 14th. Any decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission can be appealed to you all, so a likely time frame, if this is appealed up to you all, would be January, sometime January 2007. One of the issues that Mr. O'Hare brought up that staff was directed to look into last week was, well, what happens, does the site actually get occupied? Could the source occupy and start operating out of that site while this appeal is going forward? Staff looked at the section on appeal procedures, and that's attached to the memo that I passed out to you all a little bit ago. And staff's interpretation and use of that section is that when an appeal is filed, all actions that would further the project cease. So the owners of the site can move forward with building repairs. As reported to you all last week, they have roof repair permits and some other permits for repairing, and that can go forward, but they cannot occupy the site for the use that's basically the subject of the appeal. I've spoken with an attorney representing the source, and although the attorney does not agree with staff's interpretation of that section, they informed us that the source has no intention to occupy anyway within the next few months. So essentially, we just wanted to report that to you all as directed last week, allow the appeal process to move forward, and the occupancy is not an issue at this point. Okay.
Thank you, Stan. Mr. O'Hare, you have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, I do. This is a continuation of a public discussion item that I brought before you at your last meeting. And the sum and substance of my complaint was that staff was bending the rules in order to favor a cause that staff was prepared to champion. I have looked at the agenda item that you were given today, and staff's continuing to do that, continuing to load the dice in order to sandbag a residential neighborhood. This subject, status report of site at 5925 37th Street for residential treatment center. I'm here to tell you that you're being manipulated by your staff. A transient shelter for homeless people is not the same thing as a residential treatment center for recovering alcoholics, which this facility was several years ago. And staff is conditioning you to believe that this is a continuation of the same use, which it is not, and it's not the same owner. And staff, Gary made the point on a prior meeting, on a prior subject, that government has a responsibility to keep good records, even if members of the public don't. Well, government also has a responsibility not to twist and bend the rules in order to get what staff would like to see happen at the expense of a well-established residential neighborhood. It's not right. It's not fair. I don't get a chance to describe things to you in what is supposed to be a disinterested, objective agenda item. That's not what you got.
I think all we're trying to say, and being an attorney, you know there's a process. We're just trying to tell you there's a process, and you know the process well. You're the one.
I do, Joe. I do.
You're the one that has brought this here, not us. We keep circumventing our process up here. And
no, Joe.
And we don't have. Let me say this: that you will give your position. And I think one of the problems we're running into, everyone's coming to the Board of County Commissioners rather than following the process set in our rules.
No, the process wasn't followed as an initial matter to unload this facility onto a neighborhood. Had it been put forward in such a way that there was public input and notice, it would be a different story entirely. But your staff elected not to do that, and that's what we're protesting. And they continue to do it and will continue to do it, and you're the bosses. You need to know this.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hare. Any further comments?
But no, I would move staff's recommendation on this to no board action. But I'd also like to say that Mr. O'Hare and the staff and everything else, I am not in a position to determine whether staff did this or staff didn't do this. Because it goes through and follows the appeal process, I assume that both sides have an opportunity to present all arguments and if it's appealed to the board, we'll get both sides of all arguments, then we can make that judgment. But I'm not in a position to make any type of judgment at this point, based on what I've heard.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. No, we didn't have a motion.
Well, no action required.
No action required, sorry. Okay, we're up to item departmental matters 11A2. Consideration of grant approval agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for shoreline restoration on the Lost Tree Islands.
Move approval.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 11, no items on B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Under I, Public Works, Gifford Park Security House. Report? No report?
Basically, what we're recommending is, we've had problems getting the bids for the Gifford Security House. We've tried for several years to get that facility built. We've gotten bids that were were very high. We've done a few things, like we did the off-site, getting the electric and the water and sewer to that internally to help reduce the cost. What has happened, I think there's a gentleman here also that one of the bidders that Jim didn't recommend. What we're asking to do is to negotiate, and I think Jim's here to handle it. And we also have a gentleman here who would like to speak on his behalf, on his own bid and behalf.
All right, we'll be right with you, sir. Let me hear what he has to say.
Jim Davis, Public Works Director. The staff has bid publicly the construction documents for the Gifford Security House at Gifford Park. And the first time we bid the project, back in March, we received one bid that was way over budget, $179,000. So we rejected that. And then we rebid it later in the year and received no bids at all. The Park and Recreation Committee is very interested in getting this house built. There are some security issues at Gifford Park they feel need to be addressed immediately. And the Press Journal, after the second bidding, did a little article on the house. And due to that article in the newspaper, some contractors came in and said, well, you know, we'd be interested in giving you a price for that. And we told them, well, we didn't know at this point what our procedure was going to be. So a few of them did submit some pretty good bids. And two of those, one from Michael Schlitt Construction Company, was $131,620. And a second bid was received by another local company, BMAC Construction, for $99,950. But on that bid, there were a lot of things not included. The interior finishings, the flooring, no fill. And we checked records and we found that this particular company seemed like it has only built one house for the owner in the county. And based on those two bids we received, we feel that the most responsive and bidder is Michael Schlitt Construction. We do think the price of $131,000 is a good price from that contractor. He has built many buildings in the county and is a reputable contractor. So we have two options: to either award the project to Michael Schlitt or to rebid it publicly a third time, which will take probably another 45 to 60 days. And the Recreation Committee is adamant that this house needs to be built immediately. They are having security problems at the Gifford Aquatic Center, the Gifford Community Center, the Youth Activities Center, and the park. So staff is bringing this forward to you. We do think the Michael Schlitt bid is a good bid and that the contractor has done many projects in the county and has pulled many building permits, and that it's a good contractor. So we would recommend waiving a third bidding procedure and awarding it to Michael Schlitt.
You mentioned that BMAC did not include some items, and one is fill. Are we requiring contractor to buy the fill and put it there? Doesn't the county have fill somewhere to take over there?
Well, we have done some of the work already. Utilities has been gracious enough to put in the water and the sewer line up to the building. That was a big item that was a concern to some of the house builders. We could put the fill in ourselves, but it's better really for the contractor that's pouring the slab to put in the fill. That way he guarantees the slab on the fill that he's put in. And, you know, I just think it's better for the contractor to do the building pad and the slab and everything.
All right. Sir, you like to make a comment?
Yeah, good morning. My name is Brian McKinney, and I'm with BMAC Construction. And yes, I picked up the interest in the story from the article in the newspaper. And, you know, I went down and I talked with Jerry Davis, a very nice person and very concerned with the county's interest. And at that time, he had mentioned about the lack of interest on the bids. And in the interest of the county, now I don't know the words, you know, verbatim, but this is the way I interpret the conversation going, that, yeah, there's some items on page 30 would be fill in the interior of the house or whatever. We are interested in getting the lowest bid for the county, so these items can be deleted on the bid, and which I did. And then after that, there was some follow-up conversations with Lou Pieri of Turner Construction, which I believe that the county turned to him for some suggestions on the bidding thing. We had, I guess what you could call, or I would call, a workshop on it, of ways to cut down on the bid and duplication of the items. And one of them was a bid bond on a small job like this that, you know, probably it's a duplication with insurance and, you know, how you have to mechanics lien, that could save the county a considerable amount of money, which on the first bid, that amount was $13,900. And fill and other things, and this was all talked about. I guess the reason why, one of the reasons why I'm here before you, because of one follow-up conversation as of about November 9th, that my bid was refused because it was incomplete. I was playing on that level field that this is what they wanted to exclude and include. I'm not in the loop, and I never got a follow-up comment on anything on the bid that we've changed directions, or we want to do this, or we want to do that on it. And I noticed that I don't know where or what, but on the successful bid recommended, it has on their bid something written on the top, revised. You know, I don't know what that means. And there also is on the successful bid that there's a 20% deposit. That was never talked about in any way. It was, we were talking to ways to cut down to make it better for the county. The items that I deleted on the thing that I put a follow-up letter, I don't know if I have it here, but I could do those within the budget. That would come to, my bid would come to somewhere around $117,000. Regarding the, you know, the bid that is before you for approval has 180 days to complete the thing. I know time is of the essence of what this gentleman said. My bid had 90 days on it. If they rebid it, gave everybody a level playing field, and there probably is going to be a lot more contractors interested in bidding it now for two reasons. One, a lot of the red tape is out of the issues, and the second one, the economy has changed a little bit, and I think everybody deserves a whack at this with a level playing field on what they are going to request and what not. I'm available for any questions, or I got more if you want.
Any questions of this gentleman? No? Well, thank you for your input. Yes, ma'am, you have comments?
My name is Kathy Summerlin, and I'm with Michael Schlick Construction. And I had seen in the bid list through the county that this was available for bid, but at the time it was closed, so that when I saw the article in the Press Journal, I talked to my boss and I said, Mike, I can't believe they can't build this house for $150,000. We have in the last 2 years completed about 10 houses about this size for much less than $150,000. We talked to Jerry and we dealt with Lou at Turner Construction. Lou kind of gave us this timeline. You need to get us a bid by this date. I went in with the first number with Lou, and I was like, Lou, I've got a couple things estimated here, you know, I don't know which way I am, and that's the reason we finally did a revised bid, because we got the bid in from all of our subcontractors. We have proposed a completed house with a CO, sod, toilet paper holders, medicine cabinets in your bathroom, ready for someone to move into. And the timeline, 20% deposit is negotiable. That's our standard contract. We can do 10%. We do need something to go and at least pay for the cost of permits when we start a job. Permits on this house with the impact fees, you're looking at a total of about $11,000 just to kind of go in and get permits. Timeline, probably about 4 months total to finish. Some of that's based on suppliers, though. You never know. So we always give ourselves just a little extra time just in case, because we've had hurricanes, we've had other problems, and there is no exact, it's nice to say my drywall guy is going to be here on this day and finish on this day. We have done, in the last 2 years, some really, really large projects. We renovated Bethel Isles Villas, which was 8 units, which was lost to the hurricanes. Plantation Apartments on 17th Place. We did all the hurricane renovation from them. So we're very familiar with construction. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Any questions of either of these two people? You have some more comments?
Yes, if I might. Yeah, true, I've only built one house in Indian River County, of which I rent, that is similar, and I take the full thump of the escalating real estate taxes on it. As for experience, I do have 35 years in the construction industry, and time permitting, I get down to Habitat Humanity and work on those houses that are very familiar, and that is more of hands-on working. I know how to build this house, and I know the county has their concerns or whatever, but I believe that I can, my 35 years of experience and recommendations should have some kind of credence on it, along with my bid being lower. The deposit that, that was mentioned, that was never mentioned in anything, and this bid does not include impact fees. I guess that they have the issue of the underground electric coming to the property, which is going to be costly. I guess they have that resolved.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. What's your pleasure in this?
You answer that, Jim. I got a couple of questions about the underground utilities. Has that been resolved?
The water and sewer has been installed up to a few feet from the building pad. So no longer does the contractor have to put in a long sewer line and a long water line.
Okay, I got 3 or 4 questions. One is the utilities. Who paid to put them in?
County Utilities Department put them in, and
we approved that here from.
We're going to reimburse. Actually, that was my decision. We're going to reimburse the county utility department. We had them put it in.
Recreation budget.
It'll come out of the optional sales tax, because this is in the optional sales tax.
Mr. Baird, along those lines about who pays for those, it was on that your question.
Okay.
It's on with some of the houses that we're purchasing and then demolishing. Why can't we transfer those impact fees?
Oh, you can't. You can't do that by ordinance. It stays with the property. We're not exempt from that. You cannot. When we demolish a house, it stays with that lot. We're not. In fact, our ordinance states water, sewer, road impact fees stay with the property. They do not. They're not allowed to transfer them to another piece of property.
What if you move the house?
Pardon?
If you move the house? I'm under the impression the impact fees can be moved with the house.
Well, I'm pretty sure our definition is it stays with the property. And I guess you have to define with because it, especially in utilities, because we didn't want a black market where people are trading and selling impact fees on a secondary market on concurrency. So that's why we say it stays with the property. Now, as far as and we have to pay impact fees. Let me say we've bid this thing a couple of times, and I decided I wanted to get this done because the Gifford community has been on our back for several years to get this completed. So I said, we've got to try something, think out of the box, be a little, unconventional, and try and get this project moving. I even got Turner Construction involved, see if they could donate materials, which didn't work out. We were trying everything to get it in under budget. And so this is, And so we tried to, we don't normally do this, negotiate rather than have, we weren't very successful on the bids. We have bid it two or three times, and we've looked at the complaints. One was getting the utilities there. All the house builders didn't want to be bothered with that, so we've tried to resolve that. But it's up to the board. We could rebid it. The environment is different. We were just trying to move this project because it's been 4 or 5 years we're trying to get it done.
Thank you, Joe. Gary, will you have some more?
Also, question would be, the material they're going to buy for this house and so on and so forth, would we, I know it's a much lesser amount, but would we still buy that through the county, or would it save the sales tax?
No, the contractor would buy the materials. We don't have a sales tax savings program on this project. We don't usually do it for smaller projects. Something like the admin building, millions of dollars, it's advantageous to go through all the paperwork and keeping track of every single bill, but we don't do it for small projects.
We would have to purchase every piece of material ourselves and give it to the contractor, and it becomes administratively pretty labor intensive.
The next question is, why couldn't you put a modular home there like we've done in other areas? And I know we've got several of them right now that are going to be going back to FEMA that could probably be purchased.
Zoning does not allow us. That was the first thing I said. We've got them everywhere in the schools, but the zoning does not allow it at the Gifford Park. My planning
It allows a modular.
Pardon?
It allows a modular, not a mobile home, but a modular.
A modular.
We did pursue and get prices on a DCA-approved hurricane-proof modular, and the prices were, at the time we took costs, were almost similar to building a concrete block structure.
Yeah.
So we felt the longevity of a permanent, built-in-place building would be advantageous over a modular.
Yeah. I haven't looked at the modulars, but what I've seen and read, and they're sheetrock, they're shingled roofs, a lot of them are 2x6 construction.
And they cost just as much as new built. I've looked in that for a project.
Right, but they'd be a lot quicker also. And then the other thing is...
No, not too much quicker either. They have to build it somewhere.
Okay. And the other, I'm a little between the bids, and I read I'm sorry.
Brian McKinney.
Yeah, I read Mr. McKinney's letter here, and he's got some valid points. I think there was some confusion in the bidding process. The other thing is it was rebid, and I don't know how long that takes, but the market is getting flatter and flatter and flatter, and we may save another $10,000 or $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I think the last time we saw a bid, the only bid we had, I think it was over 300. No, what was it? Over 200 and some thousand or something?
179.
Yeah, it was off high.
Plus there were some other. The bid is in your backup there.
Yeah. The other thing is I've talked to a couple of contractors, and I've heard anywhere from $80, and depending on where you build the house, but $80 a square foot seems to be the floor now. Now, a couple of years ago it was $150, $200 a square foot, and depending on what's in the house, of course. But if we can save some more money, I wouldn't have a problem bidding it again. And the other thing is I'm not even sure. I know we got vandalism up there, and we're going to build a house to house a deputy, and I don't know how much security that adds to the park. I mean, he's a working deputy. He's spending the evenings there and sleeping and so on and so forth. And I honestly don't know the answer to that. Same thing, I know when I was sheriff, we did that a lot with the schools, had modular units on the school grounds where they stayed. And I really don't have the stance as to how effective that is. But we're a lot further down the road than that. But.
All right, gentlemen, we have 2 alternatives here, but we actually have 3 alternatives. What's your pleasure?
I'll move to rebid it.
I'll second that for discussion.
Under discussion.
No, just and looking at it, how long ago was it whenever Mr. Slick came to us?
His proposals dated.
We revised 11/6.
When he originally bid it.
Why is that
He
important?
submitted a proposal, I believe, back in September, and then it was
Okay.
revised later.
You know, I don't know. I guess for the integrity of the bidding process, and if we have the bid ready to go, since we've already advertised this twice, all we'd have to do is change some simple dates. The specs of the bid are ready to go out on the Manstar.
Yes, and we would recommend waiving a performance and payment bond, because the last time we bid the project, those bonds came in at $13,000, and that's 10% of the cost of the house. Usually a bond is maybe 2% or so. The bid was $13,600 for a bond, and many of these residential contractors that build this size of a project simply are not bondable at a good rate.
Right.
So we would suggest you waive the bonding, and we would only make pay draws as work is completed, so we're covered.
Okay, we have a motion to rebid. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
4-1, motion carries.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, under J1, Utility Service, Vero Lake Estates Water Sewer Road Survey.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. This is kind of the culmination of a long journey. Basically, as the Commission may recall, back in February 2006, we started the process of considering initially what would have been a water assessment project for the entire Vero Lakes Estates system. We did. We've subsequently had a public meeting, and in the process of this, went back to the Commission, gave the results of the public meeting, of which we did have, I know Commissioner Newberger was there, and I think Commissioner Davis was there, and we may have had others. Subsequently, we were then requested to do a survey, and in the process of that, try to get a sense of what is the desire of the Vero Lakes Estates neighborhood, keeping in mind that the project was expanded to take into consideration not only water but sewer, but also roads and drainage. And in the process of that, we did a survey. And I have Dan Chastain, who is actually the person that did the survey in conjunction with Kim Massung on this thing, that can give you a little bit more detail. Basically, they sent out 4,900 letters to lot owners. Now, keep in mind that in the process, you may have an individual that may own several lots. So there are actually about 6,000 lots out there. So if the numbers look a little bit different, that'll give you an idea. We did receive the information, and basically on October thereabouts, we kind of culminated the results of the survey. It was kind of interesting because we did receive 2,878 responses back from the 4,900 that we did send out. And if you look at the Commission agenda item, you'll see sort of a breakdown of how they're divided. And unfortunately, if you look at it, you get a perception that, yes, there were a total of 1,483 people or respondents that said yes, they would, within their response, they would like to see water out there, which is approximately 51%. But in reality, when you look at the entire overall survey, you really, to my judgment, you didn't really see a commanding decision to say move forward with an overall assessment. So staff, and this is my recommendation, that at this point there was not, in my mind, a consensus that appeared to say go forth with the entire project. What I am recommending is that we already currently have a water line within Vero Lakes Estates, and it goes through the project and it ties up into 512. We can add additional master plan lines that become sort of a backbone. The process would be just like we traditionally do right this minute. If somebody decides to hook up, they pay the traditional $11.25 per front footage on the process. The benefit to that would be that theoretically, as you move along on this type of a process, it becomes sort of a catalyst. Somebody looks down the street, there's a water line 4 blocks down the road. The hope would be that as over time, somebody would look down there and say, hey, let's talk to my neighbors, and instead of maybe an overall assessment for the entire project, you begin to see little bits and pieces. In essence, you begin to eat the elephant a bite at a time in the process. And my recommendation is we proceed with that type of a process at this point. And suspicion being that 10 years from now, you're going to see the majority of Vero Lakes estates already come under a piece-by-piece assessment program anyway. Now, we are going to proceed. The county administrator and I have talked about the possibility of also looking for additional grant funding to subsidize the projects. We will be looking at that to see if we can still facilitate some additional state funding. And if that's the case, then we'll try to implement the process. But today, that's my recommendation, is we kind of give the residents out there sort of an answer as to this is not hanging over your head as a potential assessment project.
Mr. Barrett, any questions of Barrett?
Yeah.
Yes.
When you're looking at 1125 or
1125, yeah.
per lineal foot, is that correct? So
Yes.
Frontage foot. So if I'm 6 lots down and it's 600 feet to my house, do I pay for the 100-foot frontage of my house, or do I pay for the 600 feet to get there?
This becomes sort of like the carrot out there. If you're 600 feet away from that water line, you have to talk to your neighbors. You have to develop a petition for an assessment project. You get with Mr. Chastain, and the beauty of that type of process is it's so close to you that theoretically you might begin to see this thing begin to come in over time.
The other question I had, was there any breakdown between lot owners and residents? I know back when we did the drainage district up there where we assessed all the property owners, the residents for the most part were in favor of it. The lot owners, which most of them are owned by one person, were not in favor of it. But we've done a lot up there with that money. We've improved drainage, we've put some paved streets in. A lot of things have happened over the last, close to 20 years. And I just wondered if these numbers are kind of overwhelming when you look at the difference, but are we looking at lot owners, or is there...
You're actually looking at both. I tell you, Dan may be able to give you some more specific information, but what we did is we said, if you own a series of lots, now you would receive the letters. You may send one letter back, even though in fact you own 3 lots.
Or 3 letters back.
Exactly. So, we have data that we tried to differentiate between the empty lot versus the lot that had a home on it. We actually correlated back against the property appraisers database, and we looked at it from the standpoint of saying, okay, is this a house or is this a vacant lot? And we tried to even break it down from that standpoint. But again, just looking at the total respondents on the basis of what we sent out, this just did not seem to be, in my judgment anyway, an overwhelming support for an assessment project. So I would, again, I believe that as we put in occasional water lines for master plan purposes, people are going to see it down the road and talk to their neighbors, and it won't be happening overnight, but it'll take a little at a time. It'll be like Sebastian. That's virtually what happened with Sebastian. Piece at a time.
Recommendation.
I'll second that.
Have a motion to approve this staff recommendation. Any discussion?
Yes. Where would this frame or these trunk lines run? And that may be a discussion for another day if you don't have that information.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got, let me suggest this. I have put together an overall suggested master plan on this, and we have analyzed it. We're taking a look at it as we speak. The first line, basically, can you give me a hand on this for a second? The dotted line represents the existing lines. This is a suggestion. You'll basically see moving off of the existing line on 510 there. What we're creating is literally a loop, and that is a hypothetical suggestion at this point. It's encompassing the entire area. Obviously, there's some flexibility associated with that, and we can kind of move it one way or the other on this. What it does give us, it gives us a little bit of an ability to loop the system, the water system out there. And again, it literally boxes in the development like that. And hopefully the idea would be as people begin to see it, they begin to develop little mini assessments that work inward into the process. So depending as to what the needs of the area would be, we can modify that somewhat.
Yeah.
But
I'm just looking at the first part that goes north-south on the far right-hand side.
Yeah.
I mean, moving that over to where you could have houses on both sides tap into that in the future
Yes.
may make more sense than running it down a canal with A1
Right.
or 1 zoning. But I'm glad to see this. I think that, nobody doubts, I think that in the future this is going to be necessary. What we're doing as a county, I think, is preparing ourselves for the future in the day that there may be some water quality issues out there. And some people, of course, say that there is now. Of course, other people say that they absolutely love the way, leave us alone. But this is setting ourselves up so that we can move forward and have them opt into the government services being force-fed a mandatory lien.
And as I say, we're going to continue looking to get whatever subsidized funding we can. We'll continue with that effort, but it's sort of a tough process like that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. County Attorney has no matters. Commissioner items. I would like to take just a minute to thank the staff before I leave, especially Kim. And all the others, too. Jim Davis is leaving, and Bob Keating, and Eric, and all of those people who have worked so hard to make me look good. And that would include also, yeah, it did. That would also include the general workers who are out and about today. Hundreds of them out there working hard to make this county what it is. And I've been very proud to serve with them, and I'll come back, and I'm going to sit in the back with my two buddies out there, Bob and Jim, staring at you guys all night. Wrong. Anyway, moving right along. Gary Wheeler, you have any comments?
No.
Sandra?
No.
Wesley?
Just want to say it's been a pleasure serving with both of you gentlemen, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. Tom?
I'd just like to say, Mr. Chairman, it's been an enjoyable pleasure serving with you for the last 4 years, and I truly believe that Indian River County is a great place to live, and I want to ditto what Art has said with staff, that they have truly done a tremendous job with Indian River County, and I think the public is blessed to be moving forward with what we have coming in, and Godspeed.
Thank you.
I will not be sitting back there with the group.
Occasionally, we hope. And the final act here is Special Districts and Board, Solid Waste Disposal District, Engineering Services for Design, Permitting, and Construction of the Fellsmere Customer Convenience Center Expansion.
Oh,
that's a good one to end on.
Absolutely. I move approval on that. I tell you, between the sidewalks and now the convenience
I'll
center.
second that one. I can second motion
Yes.
still.
Yes.
Under discussion.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I see we've spent about $655,000. Is that the complete project, including the $179,000 or $180,000 almost engineering, or is that an additional?
Now, for the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities, the $655,000, we purchased a little over 4 acres, about 4 1/4 acres of land adjacent. As the Commission may recall, the current existing site is 1.29 acres. It literally is not big enough to do any work. So we purchased the land for that amount of money. We've actually budgeted this year for the improvements. So that cost itself was just for the land purchase.
And what's the total? What's the estimated total cost on?
We have in the budget about $1 million associated with the project.
Is that, I see these numbers. These are big numbers, and when let's say it's $1 million, and this is $180,000 for engineering, that's almost 20% of the total cost of the project just for engineering, and it just seems like a lot of money for engineering something.
This one is a little bit more intricate, because basically what we're going to end up having to do is road work on 512. We're actually going to be in a position to construct ingress and egress access deceleration lanes to be in a position to get into it. One of the problems, and this was at a request of the city of Fellsmere, currently right now, if you were to drive in there, we actually become a traffic hazard.
Yes.
It has gotten to such an extent that we've almost had traffic accidents, so it's not as simple a project as getting in there and saying, okay, I'll build some roads internal to the system, and this where I know where I'm going to park. The majority of the construction is actually going to be road work, ingress, egress, leaving on 512, plus there will have to be a parallel road system adjacent to 512 like that.
Well, I know this has been an eyesore and a thorn for
yeah.
probably 20 years, or just about that. So it's a long time in coming, and I agree with that. My only question was, it just seems like a lot of money we're spending for engineering, and they've got a list of things they do here, but that was it. So my question's been answered.
Tickle to death to move forward with it. Okay.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And I think if there's no further ado, we'll adjourn the meeting. 11:35.
You realize you got sidewalk and Bell's Merritt?